I'm Quaylin Nassar. Did you ever feel you needed a roadmap or a guide to know what you should do with your life? Well, when it comes to the church, there's a guide who's ready and waiting. John Rigetti is going to be talking with Father Joe Allen. He is the director of the Antiochian House of Studies on the faculty at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary and has written and taught several seminars, articles, and publications about spiritual direction and pastoral care. So, are you ready to learn about your spiritual guide?
Father Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks
It's always
for inviting
nice
me.
to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Spiritual direction and pastoral care. These are words that are probably foreign concepts to a lot of people, even many Orthodox. What do they mean?
Well, they're related but distinct. Spiritual direction really is a ministry which is much more focused. It's much more related to the dialogue between a director and a directee, to a pastor and a parishioner. It's a dialogue and a personal ministry. Pastoral care includes spiritual direction. Pastoral care means the care for the community of all the ministries, whether it's serving the liturgy or celebrating an event at the parish. It means administration, it means teaching and preaching. Pastoral care is a much more inclusive and broad term that includes spiritual direction. People seem to understand much more pastoral care, pastoral ministry, pastoral theology, pastoral counseling, but pastoral care is really a wonderful term to use when we think about the concern for the development of the community and the people in the community, whereas spiritual direction, as I said, is a much narrower focus than that.
How does a priest know how to direct people within the parish for them to be able to contribute to parish life?
Well, it's what the person brings to the dialogue. Everybody's a different person. Everybody has different crises in their life, different developments in their life. And spiritual direction is always, and always has been, even in the literature about spiritual direction, is always initiated by the person who is seeking the direction. If we study the history of spiritual direction, and there's a distinct history that goes with this, especially in the Eastern Christian tradition, from where this spiritual direction was born and came forth, actually. If you study that history, you see that people went to visit the elders, whether they were in the desert or and some were. St. Anthony the Great started this when he went to the deserts of Egypt. After the church was recognized by the government, the people lost their faith lost their confidence, I shouldn't say faith, lost their confidence that the church would be able to minister the way it should, because it was now becoming a political entity. So to get spiritual guidance and pastoral care, but especially spiritual direction, they flocked to the desert, to St. Anthony, who went out to the desert to develop a very monastic life, but in order to direct other people. So people flocked to see him, and we still have in the Orthodox Church language that people use without even thinking about it. The elder is called in Slavonic the starits. If you talk to someone who goes to a Slavic church, they'll know what a starits is, or in the Greek language, the geron. It's where the word gerontology comes. It means an elder. In the Semitic languages, Abba, Imma, because men and women were both spiritual directors, by the way. In the Eastern tradition, spiritual direction was not limited to clergy. It's much more a gift or a charism of a personal, that inheres in a person rather than in an office. And historically, what's interesting is when the Crusades went east, the Western Christians were shocked to see that in the East, that lay people, spiritually mature lay people were giving spiritual direction. Because in the West, it was really only the priests and only the clergy, kind of a clericalism relative to that. They were shocked to see that in the Eastern Christian tradition, that the lay people, men and women, were giving spiritual direction. Now, it doesn't mean that they gave absolution or had confession. That's relative to the office of a priest or
Sure.
a bishop. So the elder who gave the spiritual director, who gave this direction after the time of doing the work of spiritual direction, would then send the person down to the priest or bishop for the absolution prayer. And therein is the link between confession and spiritual direction, which we've lost a lot of in our church, in the Orthodox Church, to be sure.
So spiritual direction, if I'm hearing you correctly, develops a relationship between the spiritual father or elder, male or female in that instance, and the lay person, and that eventually, I guess, gets us to the recognition of talents.
Yes.
Within the church. So
Of course.
not only are you guiding my spiritual development, but then I come to this moment of what do I have? What are these gifts that I have
Yes.
that help me develop spiritually? How do you get there with a parishioner? How do you help someone define through spiritual direction what their talents are?
You know, John, there's a difference between listening and hearing. A person who is a spiritual director has to listen and has to discern what talents are in the person. You're right, spiritual direction was not only given to people in crises. People used to write in their diaries and take their diary with them to the spiritual father or the director, who would review the diary with them and go over their behavior during the week and or the month or whenever they would go to see a spiritual director. And as the person would be reviewing their diary, the spiritual director had to listen, and still, it's the pattern we have to follow today. It's almost like introducing a person to himself or herself. It was like holding a mirror up and saying, look, you have this talent, and you're not using this talent. Look at your diary, or look what you're telling me. These talents that you have are dying. They're charisms, gifts of God, gifts of the Spirit. And unless you use them, you're letting something very valuable die. That's the problem with the spiritual direction relative to talent. You have to listen for them and bring them out of the person.
Father, what can some of these talents be? Let's define them. What are they?
You know, I noticed in my own ministry, both as in spiritual direction, but especially as a pastor of a parish, that sometimes a person will approach me, maybe my deacon or maybe a lay person, and will say, Father, did you know that so-and-so does this? So-and-so paints, is an artist. So-and-so has a beautiful voice. So-and-so has been educated in this area, and they're not contributing this to the life of the community. My job, and the job of any priest who's in the pastoral ministry, is to see whatever that be. I mean, and it's multitude. Some people are good administrators. Some people are good teachers. Some people are good singers. Some people love children. Some people love to visit the elderly and, want to do outreach work, philanthropy and charity and so on. And the answer there is that the priest has to be able to see that as a talent and cultivate it. It's a seed that has to be planted, and fruit has to come out of it, see? So.
How do you help a parishioner identify that? I think there are sometimes people can see they have a talent, they use it in a professional world, but don't even think about the application of that talent within the context of the parish or within the context of the church. How do you help them identify that as a talent, a gift that God has given that they can and should give back to God?
I think the community does that. I think the church community does that. They in a sense, almost they'll force the priest, to deal with this talent that they're bringing forth. I think the people in the community, because they have a different relationship sometimes than with the priest. It shouldn't be, because our church is not a church of clericalism, but I think parishioners have a certain bond of communion between each other that will bring out these gifts, and it almost forces the hand of the priest to deal with them, and that's not a bad thing. If the priest has an open mind and an open spirit, he will want to bring out those talents.
What about the parishioner who you've identified has the talent but has reticence to use it? What do you do with that?
John, I think the environment is the critical issue. The ethos of the community is the critical issue. A person will want, theoretically it should be this way. Well, we can only, do the best we can with this, but if the environment is right, if it's a community of love and care, a person will want to contribute their talent to it. As long as the person feels that the talent, because they value their talents, as long as the person feels that that talent is contributing to the community and to the environment of love and care, people, I think, basically are good. I mean, I have confidence in people that they are good-hearted and they want to give, especially their talents. And it's if there's an environment that's proper, I think people will more readily give that talent to feel they're contributing to something. And then, of course, if they admire other parishioners at the same time, we can help them direct the energy that comes with the talent to contribute to the community.
It's really excellent advice for all of us who work within the context of the church. Stay with us. We're going to turn over to Quaylen Nassar, who's going to speak with the deacon about the practical applications, his role about using talents within the church.
How often do Orthodox Christians go to confession? Some go to confession before every communion, perhaps every week. Others confess only when they are conscious of a serious sin. Most go to confession at least once a year during the Great Fast of Lent.
I'm Quaylen Nassar, and I'm talking to Deacon Andrew Cross about his spiritual direction. Welcome to Orthodoxy Now. You're an attorney by day. You work for Reed Smith, a very high-powered law firm. You wear a shirt and a tie to work. You're a deacon now, but I want to take you back to before you became a deacon. What drew you? What did you do to become involved in the church?
I really didn't do too much other than say yes when I was asked to do things. My involvement in my early adulthood came as a result of my parish priest asking me to teach Sunday school. So I said yes, and there was an opportunity to serve and to help, and it seemed like something that was fun for me. Had never taught before. Initially, I taught fifth grade students, so I learned a lot about the sacraments, and it turned out to be really good for me. Hopefully, it was good for them too.
So instead of actually doing, some of the legal work for church, you did something that was totally opposite of what your profession was.
That's correct.
And then how did you become a deacon? What drew you to that?
Again, I was asked. I didn't necessarily say I want to be a deacon. After being involved in the parish and being involved in different activities of the services, I was asked by the priest again if I would consider serving the church in that capacity. So I said yes, and thankfully I'm able to serve in that capacity now.
So my next question to you would be, do you aspire to be a priest, or do you think you want to remain an attorney and serve in this way?
I'm happy doing this right now. I'm happy to help however I can. So.
And has becoming involved in the church become a family affair, or is it just you?
It's definitely a family affair. My wife is the president of the parish council, and so serves the church in that capacity in a service and leadership role, and so we are involved, and it helps us better as a family, and is I think a probably rewarding experience, she would say too.
And as you look at this, and you look at other people that you know who maybe aren't going to be drawn to become a part of the clergy, what would you say to them about the involvement in the church? What do you get from it?
I think that I probably don't know what I get from it, quite honestly. I know that the church has a lot of needs, and on the one level, you feel good when you help people. You feel wonderful when you help people with their problems or help with the services or whatever you're called to do to help serve on parish council. I have a sneaking suspicion, though, that what you're really getting from it, you just don't know. It helps you to become who you are to make it to the next step. When you're at the next step, you don't know, other than you know that it's nice to serve the church and it's nice to help, and I have a lot of fun doing it too.
Well, that's great that you have fun. I mean, I think a lot of people don't think about some of the activities and some of the involvement in the church can also be fun.
They should join the choir. We have a good time singing.
You have a good time singing. That's great. Did you have role models when you grew up?
I did. Gosh, my family, my mother and father and aunts and uncles were involved in the church. They taught us that serving the church however we can is very important. They're not clergy, but they always put God first, and taught us to put God first and help however we can help.
Were they active members?
They were active members, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, thank you.
And John Rigetti is going to be back in just a few moments with Father Joe Allen to talk to you more about spiritual direction and pastoral care.
Why are there no closed confessional boxes in Orthodox churches? The Orthodox see confession as fundamentally a community act, so it is visible. But what is said by the penitent and the advice given by the confessor are not audible. Also, since both priest and penitent together face the cross and the gospel book, the priest is a witness rather than a judge.
I'm John Rigetti, and we're talking with Father Joe Allen. Father, we've talked a lot about spiritual direction, but I'd also like to explore a little bit further the concept of pastoral care as well. Before we go there, we heard Father Deacon Andrew talk about his willingness to be involved in the church, but not everybody is so willing. What do you do with those people within a congregation? How do you inspire parishioners who are reluctant to use their gifts, not only for the church overall, but in a recognition that they are gifts from God to be used for the greater glory of God?
Yeah. It's a good question, and it's a tough question. Deacon Andrew made a very good point about being raised in the church. People who are raised in the church, parents who are concerned about the education of their children in the faith education, faith-based education, is something that instills in the minds and in the hearts of an Orthodox Christian love for the church to which they belong, and the willingness to give their talents, to give of their substance, to work when they're asked to work, because it's like love of a parent. You know, you can't turn that off. And I think he explained it very well, that he could not turn it off and his family could not turn it off, and he's raising his children in the same way. They will be, when they get to be adults, they will be giving parishioners of themselves. It's a mystery. He said it right. It's a mystery that you wonder, why do I want to do this? You know, what am I getting out of this, so to speak? And not everybody is thinking, you know, about the heavenly rewards. They just know they have to do it. And that comes from love. If you teach children to love the church and that their life in the church is important in their relationship with God, I think there's always less hesitance to be active and to offer your gifts to the church. That takes us back to the important point about creating an environment of love and care to which a person would want to give their talents and feel that their talents are being lifted up and exposed because of the environment to which they're giving those talents.
Do you think when a priest, the pastor, has difficulty getting there with a parishioner, that other parishioners, lay people, can help that process?
Without a doubt. I have learned so much from my parishioners about each other. And you know, it might be after liturgy on a Sunday, it might be during a social event, a wedding or baptism or something, where I learned something that I'm so surprised to hear. But it's brought to me by another parishioner, or it's brought to me by a family member who says, you know, my aunt or my uncle have this talent, or have this profession, for example. Now here the deacon is a lawyer. I'm sure that he's offered his services in many ways as a lawyer and as a deacon. It's an ideal situation for a priest to keep his ears perked up for, in the pastorate.
Pastorate leads us to pastoral care, the relationship of a pastor with his flock. Let's talk a little bit more about pastoral care. As a pastor, as the priest in a congregation, how do you identify what the needs are of your congregation and or even the specific needs of individual parishioners in giving them the care a pastor should be giving?
Yeah. The word pastor is revelatory. It reveals to us the truth about the role that priest plays as pastor, because not every priest is a pastor. A pastor means a shepherd. It means that you're shepherding a flock, a community. And certainly St. John Chrysostom reminds us, by the way, that they're not sheep, animal sheep. That's a metaphor, kind of a symbolic way of understanding our function of guiding and leading a group to the ultimate destination, which of course is deeper and deeper in community with God. So a pastor is given that responsibility when he's ordained and appointed to a parish to know the ins and the outs of the sheep that he's leading. And as we said just the past minute ago, you get to know that in a multiple ways, what the talents are of a person and what the person can offer. One-to-one takes us to pastoral counsel. See, that's a little different than pastoral care. Pastoral care is a more inclusive term. Pastoral counsel means when you literally have to counsel someone through a difficult time that they're facing. In marriages, with adolescents, with teenagers, sometimes kids have trouble in school. People in the parish should have the confidence to know that the priest, because he, as a pastor, as a shepherd, because he is demonstrating this love always through the sacramental life and through celebrating and praying together, that he's there for them, that they can trust him. With marital problems, well, to be honest, it's almost always the woman that will come to see the pastor about the problem if it's a marital problem. The men have to be forced into it. I'm not sure why that always is true, but I would say, and I've been a priest 40 years and a pastor 40 years, almost always it's the woman who realizes the danger of the relationship and she will come to the pastor. And then the job is, how do I get them both in so that we can start clearing the air about what the problem really is?
Why is there a reluctance, though, to turn to the pastor for one-on-one counseling? I think in an American context, especially if there's difficulty in a marriage, our kid is having trouble with drugs, the first thing we kind of do is, who's the professional that I should see? Turn to the yellow pages instead of thinking of going to the church.
That's a great question. And it's revealed in the history of the term therapist. Therapist is really a word of the church. It's the word that belongs to the church, therapia theon, the healer of God. The church lost that. I think the church surrendered it, to tell you the truth, and it was picked up by the secular psychotherapists. It's just a historical fact that we lost the confidence to do that kind of counsel to secular counselors, and we have to win it back again, just by exposing the talents, because we have many well-trained clergy ready to do pastoral counsel, that it's just a matter of the people beginning, and I think they are, beginning to realize that they can go to this pastor who is trained to help them get through the difficult times, whatever they be.
And people may not even realize that if their individual pastor is not trained, that today pastors know who these other clergy are that are, and can bring them to the table to help that family through whatever that issue or crisis is.
On every pastor's desk, there should be references that you can make for a particular problem, but it has to start with the confidence that I can go to my pastor with the problem, knowing that he'll find a way to help, whatever that is.
Father, thank you. It's been a most enlightening session.
It's been a wonderful pleasure of mine to be here. Thank you, John, for inviting me.
Do the Orthodox believe in purgatory? No, but the Orthodox pray for the departed that they may rest in the place of light and peace appointed for them until the final judgment at the end of time. The best image is of Lazarus in Abraham's bosom in Luke 16, verse 22. Are non-Orthodox permitted to receive communion in the Orthodox Church? The Orthodox believe that Holy Communion is an act of the Church and not just of a pious individual. All those who receive communion must be in a relationship of communion with each other and with the Orthodox Church. The answer then is, sorry, but no.
So now you can start working on your own roadmap to serving the church and Christ. John, so what did we take away today?
Well, I think we learned that spiritual direction is an ancient tradition of the church that needs to be restored, that spiritual direction can be given by both clergy and lay people, male and female, and that when we recognize the gifts that God has given us, that we really have to use those for the greater glory of God.
Thanks, John. And if you'd like to learn more about the Orthodox faith, be sure to tune in to Orthodoxy Now on WEDO Radio 810 on your AM dial, Wednesday mornings at 9:30. Watch Orthodoxy Now on Comcast On Demand and on Christian Associates Channel 95 every week. And you can give us a topic if you'd like to learn a little bit more and have a topic for us. You can send it to the address on your screen and to our website. Thanks very much for joining us.